welcome to episode 4. I'm Paleozoan and I'm doing another editorial today. I just took a road trip. It was very long and I had a chance to to an entire audiobook that I've been meaning to listen to for a long time. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. I've had lots of great conversations with friends and debates with friends, and participated in some online, not so academic debating about this. So I think this is a good topic for an editorial. Let's get right into it. The book is Cave of Bones by Lee Berger. He discovered a new hominin species. He's discovered more than this, but this had multiple individuals of the same species, all together in the same context in the same place. And it's just super fascinating. The book was well done. I love when the author narrates their own book. So that was also another compelling piece because they can offer the emotion that they were feeling when they experienced what they're narrating in a way that a typical narrator cannot do. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And Homo naledi has been such a controversial figure. In college, I had the opportunity to guest lecture on on this species for human evolution class, and it was great. I enjoyed that. I love the mystery and the wonder and the implications of it, and I'll get into that when I get into the main content. But um, I've been keeping up with it academically and all the publications, and I've watched the documentary as well. But this is just my first opportunity to actually read his book. So let's discuss this topic. In Cave of Bones, Lee Berger presents a unique approach to science and storytelling that has sparked a lot of controversy and debate across the anthropological community. I'll be upfront though, I'm intrigued by his and his team's approach and the hypotheses that they're putting forward. And just a quick pause for those non scientists out there. Um, in everyday speech, you might say something like, "Oh, I have a theory about why my dog barks when my phone rings." And what you really mean is hypothesis if you were going to write a scientific article about it. So just kind of keep that in mind. So Berger and his team have taken an open science approach, which means they're sharing early data and early interpretations, which allows for early feedback, right? But it has opened himself up to public and academic scrutiny before the conclusions are fully drawn. But this is the point of open science. In years past, it has taken decades sometimes to get the entire um, research on hominins and early humans out because, well, we'll talk about that later. But this is a more modern technological age approach to science, I believe. Open science is still relatively new in anthropology, but his choice to make to make this project an open science project has democratized the research process in anthropology. This is needed. Um, but it does seem to come with risks, which I find ludicrous because I can't imagine why sharing science would be risky. Peer review is common in anthropology. Why not do it as you go instead of waiting 20 years until you've spent so much time and money and energy and people hours doing something? Why not share this data? I think this is good. Um, And so, again, it offers scientists and public a firsthand look at his research, but it exposes him and his team to critique, um, which a lot of which has been fair and academic, but some of it, particularly on social media, has crossed the line from scientific skepticism to outright hostility, often reflecting a bias rooted in human exceptionalism, which I'll talk about here shortly. Those of you who have not followed along with Lee Berger's work on Homo naledi, I'll give you a very quick synopsis. And if you want something more detailed, such as uh, what his findings were, what the scientific processes that he's done to test these hypotheses, things like that. I think I still have my slides from my guest lecture on Homo naledi, and I can certainly make that into a podcast. If you're interested, just let me know. Okay, so they found Lee Berger and his team in South Africa's Rising Star Cave System, a new species of hominin, which is named Homo naledi. This hominin had a combination of both primitive and modern features, such as a small brain and curved fingers that resemble early hominins like Homo habilis, for example, while its wrists, feet, and other body structures to do with locomotion seem to be more similar to those of modern humans, which was shocking. There was no controversy over that. They found at least 15 individuals initially, and they noticed some evidence in the cave that suggested possible complex behaviors. Suggest and possible are key words here because people seem to be ignoring him when he uses the words hypothesis, I think, this suggests, I wonder. Okay, so remember, these are all hypotheses right now. So these bones were unique because not just because of their combination of features, but they were found very deep within the cave. Now, when most hominins and humans have used caves, they use the entrance only. They don't go very far back because how are you going to carry light back there? Or if you do carry light, how much oxygen is in there? Also, are there other animals in there? It could be dangerous. You could fall and die, correct, right? So, um, the fact that they're way back in the cave is interesting, and the fact that they died back there is also interesting. There's no evidence of a cave in. I won't go too far into this because it'll get too long, but um, it was suggestive that they were back in there. Okay, so that's very interesting. And then they found fire and not just fire, but hearths. So, like when you make a campfire and 2,000 years later we find evidence of that, we will call it a hearth. Um, Oftentimes, we just find the evidence of the scorched earth around in archaeological sites. But in one case, at least in the Naledi Cave, the Rising Star Cave, they found one that had stones around it, suggesting there was a ring around it, which is similar to the way we would do a campfire today, right? It controls the fire and the spread of fire. It keeps it in one location. So, what got Berger's team in trouble is that he suggests, well, I have only Naledi bodies here, and there's fire and some other things. There's scratch marks on the wall that don't appear natural. There are cooked animal bones. There's a hearth. There are hearths with soot on the ceiling way back in the cave that have been covered over by sediments dripping and water dripping through the cave and have been dated to the same time period that the bodies have been dated to. Okay. What if Homo naledi created these fires? What does that mean? What if they created these marks on the walls? What does that mean? All people heard was small brained monkey made fire better than humans, and everyone got really upset. That's not what he's saying at all. But I digress. We'll get more into my opinions on that momentarily. All right, so in 2017, Berger and his team published the findings on the Homo naledi remains, which were estimated to be between 236,000 and 335,000 years old, which overlaps in time with early Homo sapiens. This is very interesting because morphologically, they appear to be uh, close, partially resembling hominins of like 2 million years ago, right? But here they are only 236 or 335,000 years old. That was pretty interesting and startling. It adds another layer of complexity to human evolution, which is not a tree, it's a bush with vines wrapped around it. It's crazy. It's not a linear progression, but we'll get into that in another podcast. So it raises the possibility that Homo sapiens and Homo naledi may have interacted, or they had a parallel development of advanced behaviors in two different hominid species. That upsets people. So in the book, Berger explores the possibility that Homo naledi might have set these fires and had other culturally complex behaviors, which challenges the current accepted assumptions that these activities require a large brain. His findings continue to spark debate and pushes research to reevaluate what defines human-like behavior and which hominins may have been capable of it. One of Berger's boldest claims yet is the idea that Homo naledi, a small-brained hominin, may have practiced deliberate burials deep in the cave recesses. This, along with the fire, has sparked the most controversy. The evidence for this behavior is provocative, but it's inconclusive. And as much as I appreciate the open science approach, I recognize that the final verdict is still out, and we should all recognize this. Everyone's up in arms and attacking Lee Berger personally for practicing open science. I still find this criminal. So my stance is open, as should everyone else's be, in my opinion. The possibility that Homo naledi, a small-brained hominin, engaged in symbolic or culturally complex behaviors is intriguing. We should all be excited. We should be allowed to be excited. However, it's also possible that maybe early Homo sapiens, and this is my hypothesis, I'm just throwing this out there. So it's possible that Homo sapiens or another large-brained hominin group was responsible for some of these things. Hypothetically, an early human group could have encountered Homo naledi, or Homo naledi remains, or maybe even engaged in conflict with them, and then placed their bodies in recesses out of the way so they could use the nearby spaces for their own purposes, such as cooking and shelter. It's possible. This kind of hypothesis opens up a more inclusive dialogue. Instead of fixating on whether Homo naledi was capable, we might consider a broader range of interactions between hominid species. I think it's worth holding space for, as it encourages an exploration of possibilities rather than a rush to dismiss or confirm. But there's no evidence yet that there was any other hominid species in there except for Homo naledi so far. It's time to address the elephant in the room that I mentioned earlier, which is human exceptionalism. One major source of the backlash against Berger's ideas stems from a bias deeply rooted in the field of anthropology, which is human exceptionalism. The longstanding assumption that human evolution represents the pinnacle of cognitive and cultural development often colors interpretations of new evidence. By challenging the view that symbolic behaviors are exclusive to large-brained hominins, Berger and his team confronts this bias head-on. This anthropocentric or human-centric perspective, sometimes as entrenched in academic circles as it is among the public, leads many to reflexively dismiss the possibility that a smaller-brained hominin like Homo naledi could perform behaviors we associate with modern humans. I'll return to this idea in a moment, but just because we have not previously found evidence that smaller-brained hominins had what we define as culture doesn't mean it didn't happen. However, such dismissals go against one of the tenets of the scientific method, the need to approach research questions with an open mind. This is a pet peeve of mine, and I've encountered it in every branch of science that I've been in. There's at least there is a significant portion of scientists that think that they know everything and they are not open to new scientific ideas. And then there are the scientists that are open and willing to ask the questions. Anthropology, like all science, should be about discovery, not defending established hierarchies or preserving the perceived uniqueness of our species. If we approach every new finding with the assumption that only Homo sapiens is capable of complex cultural behavior, we miss opportunities to learn about the true diversity and richness of our evolutionary past. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. In paleoanthropology, we often work with fragmentary and incomplete evidence. Fossil preservation is rare and requires the perfect conditions. We will never find everything. The lack of physical artifacts or direct proof doesn't necessarily mean that a behavior or practice was absent. It might simply mean we haven't uncovered the relevant evidence yet. Although evidence is required for the scientific process. This is especially pertinent in debates over whether Homo naledi engaged in burial or fire use. Critics of Berger's work sometimes point to the absence of concrete, quote, proof, unquote, as a reason to dismiss his interpretations. However, with such sparse evidence available in most paleoanthropological contexts, this kind of reaction risks permanently closing doors to lines of inquiry that could lead to valuable insights. And in some cases, some of these academic refutes of his work have gone to greater lengths to disprove it than he went to hypothesize it. This reaction to open science illustrates a long-standing problem in anthropology, which is the reluctance to share data and findings with the public. And in my mind, it reflects a Gollum-like fixation on control and prestige in the field. This is data hoarding at its best. Data hoarding culture is motivated by the fear of competition or desire for sole recognition, and it hinders the scientific advancement in our field. It gatekeeps knowledge, slowing down discoveries that could emerge if findings were openly accessible to the broader research community and to the public, and to interdisciplinary research. Anthropological data, particularly fossil and genetic findings, have the potential to reshape our understanding of human evolution. But when researchers cling to discoveries, the pace of progress stalls. With information sequestered in private collections or unpublished manuscripts, we are not going to move forward this way. We need to foster curiosity. Curiosity takes courage, and those who practice it are brave. But they wouldn't have to be if people weren't so negatively reactive towards these ideas, and greed, and jealousy, and hoarding of data. And a lot of the personal attacks I've seen reek of jealousy. Attack the science with science. Don't attack the scientist. And while I haven't reached a firm conclusion on whether I think the science so far says that Homo naledi actively buried their dead or controlled fire, I stand by Berger and team's methodological approaches and willingness to challenge the human-centric, anthropocentric assumptions that have long been held. Berger and team's open science model and bold interpretations may not be without flaws, but they remind us of the importance of keeping an open mind and staying curious and asking questions. That's the type of science I want to do, and it's the type of scientific community I want to be part of. Science is about exploration, pushing boundaries, and being willing to reevaluate even our most deeply held beliefs, as much as it is about constructive criticism and peer review. These are all important. Instead of actively and negatively refuting Berger's science because it challenges your perception of human uniqueness, you might consider a bigger question. What does it say about those who resist new perspectives? If we're truly committed to understanding our evolutionary past, we should keep exceptionalistic biases in check and be open to asking questions that may expand our understanding of hominin evolution. That is, after all, why many of us have gone to school for a decade or more to do such things. Stay curious, stay open, stay professional. Thanks for listening. If you made it this far, definitely hit that like button. We need to get our numbers up. Don't be a looky-loo. Participate, click the button. Only takes a second. Helps me get into a better algorithm that will reach all the haters out there that will come and yell at me about evolution. Let's do this. I'll see you next time.